It's nice, comfortable director's chairs. It's late. It's late, guys. It's late.
I don't know. How are you not asleep? I mean, thank you. Oh, thank you for staying. I really appreciate it.
Woohoo!
I wanted to start by asking, listen, it's obviously an immensely production designed movie, and the physical challenges of trying to figure out these Rube Goldberg type traps. I was curious, what was the challenge of trying to write them? Like in terms of presenting a script to somebody and making it coherent and the way it was put together, and what the traps would look like. Were there diagrams involved? Was there?
There were lots of diagrams. As you can imagine, there's so much thread in my home to make this happen. But yeah, the feature is based on a short film, and I can just give a brief story of that, because it was this crazy lucky situation where I had to make a film for film school in high school, and I wanted to get in somewhere, but ultimately I knew that the American Film Institute was my number one, and their prompt was to tell a story in 5 minutes about a change of heart. And like I mentioned in the beginning, my dad and I co-write, and we were trying to come up with an idea that would fulfill that prompt, and we were very much inspired by the work of the Coen brothers, and specifically No Country for Old Men, and that premise of coming upon a drug deal gone bad. And we were trying to think of a way to subvert that premise with a protagonist we hadn't seen in that setup before.
Yeah.
And so we immediately thought of a seamstress, and once we figured that out, we loved all the juxtapositions that come with that in terms of the thread and the guns and the blood and her absurd car and that whole world. And we also love Rube Goldberg contraptions, as you can tell. So we came up with the short film, which is the inciting incident of the feature when she drags the guns to the men, and we shot that for no money on one day, and that became our proof of concept for this. And we were able to show everyone on our team, look, we can actually do stuff with red and it works. But the reason this got made is because the short ended up getting sent around, and it ended up in the hands of Joel Cohen, my hero. We're in a very lucky situation. And he said, turn it into a feature and do it the blood simple method and use this short as a proof of concept to show that this thread stuff works. So that was the story of this short.
Wow.
I'll ask one more and then I'll open up the audience. How long have you been writing with your dad?
Since I was 9. So my dad started in stop motion, and then he taught me stop motion as well when I was 9 years old. And I immediately fell in love with film, but he told, I wanted to animate a little ball bouncing around and do cool stuff with animation, but he drilled into me very early on. He's like, no, you got to have a beginning, middle, and end, and an ending that kind of subverts what you expect. And so that was drilled into me very early on, and we have the same taste. So a lot of people ask, how do you work with your dad? That's crazy, but we've never gotten in a disagreement script-wise.
Well,
only in the editing room, because I edit also. That's where the arguments happen, but not in the scripts.
I'll open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions? They're very stunned.
Yeah.
Did you have the multiple stories in the beginning, or did you start writing things and then stitch them together at the end?
So the question was, because the wording is very important, did you have the multiple stories in the beginning, or did you start writing things and then stitch them together at the end?
Yeah. Well, it was a lot of stitching, actually. I mean, the writing process was a bit of a nightmare, just because I think the short to feature model is really tricky, because we had no clue it was going to be a feature-length film in the end. So we had the short, and I went to AFI and started developing the feature there, and we did 22 drafts of a linear version of the feature. And on the 22nd draft, I'll never forget, after like a year of writing, we got the same note that we got on the first draft. And my dad and I were like, oh my God, we can't adapt this. We have to throw this out. And we did, and we go on very long brainstorming walks. And for a long time we thought we weren't going to be able to do it, but then we kind of were thinking about what the short film was about in the end, which is this moment of choice and decision. And we were also very heavily inspired by Run Lola Run's structure, which is a fantastic film if you haven't seen it. And that's when we kind of stitched together these 3 stories.
So the choice thing was the thing that pulled it all together in the end.
Exactly. I was reading Letterboxd comments, which is not good because there's mean ones there. And there's actually a mean one that said it was mean, but it kind of distilled what the short was about. and it was like, oh, this is really about this moment of decision, and I wonder what her different choice would have been, or something along that line. And yeah, so that inspired it.
Turns out. Yeah. There's one over here.
Hi, thanks
Hello.
so much for coming out, and like thank you so much for making this film. I had like my friend and I had like an amazing time.
Oh,
Like I
thank
didn't
you.
expect myself to like laugh and have such a great time. I didn't really like come through this film to like know what's going on. I like to come in blind.
Yeah.
So something I'm very curious about. So I really am a big fan of the unexpected superhero.
Yeah.
With like the suing techniques and everything. So like, but it kind of seemed like there was a lot of like thought process and research when it came to like all the plans that she was doing, and it's so intricate, and I feel like there was a lot of like also some amount of understanding of like engineering and physics. Like I kept telling my friend, I was like, why is she so smart? Like what is she doing here? Like she could do something else. But like I guess my question is like, how much of like, I guess what I'm curious about is like research, or like a lot of like thought, like what was like the whole process like to like figure out all the things to like happen?
So the question was about the engineering and the physics of everything, and what kind of research you did, and what was the process of putting that stuff together.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words. My sister is, sews, so I've always been around that. And that's actually her sewing box in the film, and she's always mad at me because she's like, when are you gonna give me my sewing box back? And now it's all like our production designer made it completely dirty and terrible, so she doesn't even want it. But yeah, we've always had thread around us, and my dad and I just spent so much time in our backyard with thread and cardboard guns, because of course the film is very heightened in nature, and we knew we wanted it to be heightened, but we also knew that these contraptions needed to be practical in their design, because we're a small movie and we had to shoot them practically on set. We didn't have time to do it in post. So it was just a lot of time in the backyard with these contraptions. And because my dad started in stop motion and I also started in stop motion, I think we have a bit of a stop motion obsession in terms of practical, tactile filmmaking, and in our shots as well. So I think that's kind of the physical side of things, how we developed it, is the stop motion.
Big respect to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any other in the back there?
What's your dad's background, and what's Joel Cohen like?
Yeah, so the two questions were, what's your dad's background and what was Joel Cohen like? And I'll add to that, has he seen the feature, and did you have a reaction from him?
Yeah, so well, my dad he started in stop motion. He ran a stop motion commercial company. So I'm super lucky because he taught me everything when I was young. And Joel Cohen is great. He was super humble, the most down-to-earth guy. I'll never forget, I met him at a coffee shop in Brentwood in LA, and no one was even looking at him. And I was like, this guy is like a 4-time Academy Award winner, and he's just sitting there with his notepad, and he was just very down-to-earth. And I met him with my dad, and I'll never forget, the number one thing he said to us was always work with family. And of course, he works with Frances McDormand, his wife, and Ethan. But he said family is the best to work with, because they always are, are on your side for the right reasons. And when it works, it works. And sometimes they're going to want to kill them, but that's how it goes. But it was great meeting him. And he hasn't seen the feature yet, so I'm still waiting for him to watch it. Yeah.
We have one right here.
I had go.
I was gonna ask about the editing, because it's rapid fire, brisk editing at times. It feels like the amount of shots in this is like way above the average for a 90-minute movie process.
So the question was about how did you construct the film, the editing, post-production process? Because you edit too, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was a really long process, and I love editing, but I think it took about 10 months to cut it, and my colorist told me it was the most amount of shots he's ever had to deal with in a feature ever, because he was like, this is way too many shots, way too many inserts of thread, and but it was a long editing process, and as you can imagine, I got every note possible in terms of what happens when you reorder all the stories, and what happens when you, and so, you know, I was very much trying everything, and we had a version that was 20, I think the first cut was 20 minutes longer, and then I did a version where I cut 35 minutes out of it, and that felt way too fast. It was like a music video, non-stop music video. So then we found a bit of a middle ground, but yeah, it was a long process. Is there a question?
I was just curious if, I mean, you're kind of young, but was MacGyver any influence on?
The question was MacGyver an influence on you?
It actually wasn't, and because we keep seeing, again, Letterboxd.
Have you seen it?
Just like last week, my dad was like, we should probably research, because everyone keeps saying it, like all the trade reviews have been mentioning it, and we're like, we should probably watch
Had
this.
he not seen it?
He hadn't seen it either.
Really?
And so we both were like, wow, this we get it now. It makes sense.
It's like MacGyver meets sliding doors.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And Sliding Doors I know because John, the villain in the film, he was in Sliding Doors.
Oh, okay.
He's the young guy in Sliding Doors. So yeah, but MacGyver is great. I love seeing how all those bomb scenes and everything. It's really great. So, yeah.
And the film is so clever.
Oh,
so
thank you.
clever. I enjoyed
Thank
it.
you so much.
I think we have time for one more. Let's go back.
Okay.
Did you consider revealing what happened to the girl's mom?
Did you consider revealing what happened to the girl's mom?
Yes, and we had to, again, because we did so many cuts, we tested the film a lot too. We had we had a version where everything was in there and a version where nothing was in there. And of course, at AFI, they taught me, like, you have to write a 20-page document about backstory and talk to your actor about it. So I did that work, only to cut it out and then kind of find a middle ground. But I think in the end, we were very happy with not revealing too much, just because we wanted her store to be, the store to be the thing that haunts her and traps her and be this ghost of her mother. And we really wanted to do that through these portraits, the talking portraits in the film, and kind of that web of thread that traps her throughout the entire narrative. So yeah, it was a tricky balance to find.
Well, I think we have to turn the theater over, but
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming and bringing the film to us and sharing it with us.
Woo!